I recognize a lot of those, your names, know several of you, got to be in your district and trained with you. Really excited about the resource that we're going to be looking at today. I think you're going to be really excited because my goal is always, hopefully, is at the end of the session, you can say you can take and use something tomorrow in your classroom if you wanted to. And so that was always what I was looking for as a teacher, and still do as a, I still tell people I'm a teacher. That's what I am at heart. Love it, love it, love it. My background, a lot of people don't know, actually have elementary certification. My certification is actually K5. I'm kind of old. This is year 27 for me. So out of those 27 years, 14 of those were teaching 7th grade science, which I loved. The last 2 years in the classroom, I was switched to math in 7th grade. And then I went to a district position, then a short stint at KDE for a special project. And then now I'm here at KVEC and getting to work with UI. Basically, I'm here just to help. That's all my goal is to help teachers, help administrators, help kids. So as we begin our session today, we're going to, hopefully you'll say at the end that we have met our success criteria, which is increase access for you to science assessments and tasks. Now, some of the resources I'm going to give you will also, you can share with your colleagues. There's nothing wrong with some of them to be shared, because not only are we going to look at this one awesome document, but I also have some samples from some other states that have some reading, some writing, some math, and some social studies in it too. So that, feel free to share some of those if you feel that they are good items for those content areas. We're going to talk about evaluating assessment and task in science, and what makes a good assessment or task in science. And we're going to talk about, looking at adjustments, and talking about, getting to the rigor of the 3 dimensions of our science standards. Got to make sure that we do that. So before I go to the next slide, I'm going to drop in the chat one more time the sign in for you all, for those of you that are just now getting on to be able to join. So glad you're here today. So please click in the chat on the sign in so that we make sure to get you signed in. But the next slide, I want you to think for just a second. And I want you to think about what makes a good science assessment or task. I want you to just kind of ponder that. And I want you to type it in the chat when you've got in your mind what makes a good science assessment or task. But I don't want you to hit enter yet. I want you to hold on to it, and we're going to do a little waterfall. So hold on to it. Going to give you just a few seconds to do that, because I know some of you are working feverishly to sign in. And then some of you are finishing that up and gonna get that into the chat. Like I said, don't hit enter yet. We're gonna do just a little waterfall. And okay, go ahead and hit enter now. It is not knowledge based, it's analysis. Excellent. Hello, Miss West. I'm so glad you're here today. Grade level and standards based. Excellent. Well done, Billy. That's awesome. Great response there too. Grade level and standards based. Anything else from the others? Some of you might be still typing. Sorry if I told you to hit enter and you were not done typing. Feel free to unmute too. You can do that. Anything else? Anybody else have to share? Hope you kind of think on it for just a minute. Standards based aligned with activities. Yes, got to make sure that those are all aligned. Never was, even, back in the day, years ago, before NGSS, the Kentucky Science Standards now, it was all quick recall knowledge. And I was a quick recall coach, so, that was right up my alley. Love it. But it's not just that knowledge base. It can include science, engineering, and practices. Excellent. That is exactly right. One of our 3 dimensions. Well done. Awesome, awesome. So several of you were able to type in the chat there. Um, so you all were right on target when it comes to this. Now, what I'm gonna now drop something in the chat for you. This is a little checklist that NGSS has provided, and I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you this first link, which is what I have on the screen, so that you kind of have your own copy. Be sure to bookmark or add to favorites, whatever you want to keep. And then you also are going to get a copy of my PowerPoint that has everything linked in it. And I will send you an email after this meeting today. I've already got it ready, just going to put the names in. And it'll have all the links to the PowerPoint, to the inventory, to the different documents that we talk about in today. So if you click on the link that I just dropped in the chat, you're going to pull up this little pre-screen tool that NGSS has provided, which I really like. I love a good checklist. What you're looking at here is just a really quick glance. And once you look at this, most of you won't ever have to look at it again. The next thing I dropped in the chat is the task screener. Now that is a more in-depth document that goes in a lot more detail that, let me tell you, I will talk to you real. You're not going to be able to do that for every task or assessment. It's something you can read through that can kind of help build your knowledge around what makes a good science assessment and task, but not something that you can do every day. And then also want to talk to you just a second before we get into the specifics of the items. It doesn't matter what assessment comes down the pike. If you are doing solid, rigorous tier 1 instruction in your classroom for science, it doesn't matter what assessment comes that anybody throws at you and your kids, your students are going to be fine. It's getting to the depth and the rigor of those standards, which is the challenging part. And, how do we get there? How do we get to those 3 dimensions that you've already mentioned? So if we take a look at this little check sheet, it kind of brings some of those things to mind for us. First, is it phenomenon or problem driven? And if you say no to that, then that's automatically something you're going to have to work on. You're going to need to make the task or the assessment more phenomenon or problem driven, so that you're kind of getting this idea. I'll be honest with you. First time I saw this new state assessment, I thought ACT. It's what I think of every time I look at it. I think that looks like a high school, how the high school ACT items were always grouped around this one problem, this one phenomenon that all the questions were related to. And I'll be honest, as a 7th grade teacher, I pulled from the Explorer and ACT. I used it in examples from state assessment. I pulled from all different sources to share with my kids, because I wanted them to be prepared for anything that might be thrown at them. So saying that about the core instruction, that's going to see your kids through, that's going to prepare them well for the future. But if we know the format and if we are familiar with how an assessment's going to look, it's going to help your kids not be so panicked when they sit down to look at this assessment, and not because that right there's half the battle for a lot of kids, is not feeling overwhelmed and feeling that it's too much for them to handle. Making sure they're getting some of those experiences in class of where they're getting a good science assessment. It doesn't have to be on computer, it can be handwritten, but letting them see how that looks too is a good practice as well. But just the one thing, if nothing else, solid core tier 1 instruction is the best thing that you can do, and doing that day in, day out with your students. And I know it's hard, it's not easy, but that's what we want to remember with this. Can the majority of the tasks be answered without using information by the task scenario? So if I can just read the question, like how someone said it's knowledge based, if I can just read the question and answer it based on my knowledge, it's pretty much a quick recall. It's rote memorization. If you're answering yes to most of your questions, then it needs to be tweaked. I was asked to do an observation for one teacher because she was at the grade level, of course, that was assessed, and her scores were not where she wanted them to be. And so she was, just wanting some, help of looking at her classroom and kind of just seeing what was up. Let me tell you, she had everything you couldn't teach. And I started looking around, what on earth am I doing here? This makes absolutely no sense. And so I started looking and I saw that, okay, it's not really phenomenon driven, but we can, tweak that, work with that. Then we had, I asked her to see her assessment, and ding, 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 that's where I found it. It was nothing but DCI, disciplinary core. It was the disciplinary core ideas. That's all it was. It was even fill in the blank where they had to fill in the vocabulary. Now, I'm not saying to get rid of those. You need those, but that can't be your whole test. You need to have the 3 dimensions. I had another teacher. We were going through and breaking down the standard, and she looked at me and she said, "Now, Mary," she said, "if I have this DCI and cause and effect is the cross-cutting concept that goes with it, are you telling me on my assessment I need to have a cause and effect question on my assessment related to this DCI?" And I was like, hello, that's exactly what we're saying. And so what does that mean for, like you mentioned in the chat, science engineering practice? If we're having to analyze data for our science and engineering practice, that should be on our assessment. We should have analyzing and data if that's what's matched with my standard. So keeping that in mind, making sure our assessments are 3-dimensional. And I do like the look of our standards of how they've done it to where it's easier to see the DCI and which is, which science engineering practice is matched with which and which cross-cutting concepts. So it is a nice thing. Notice number 3, again, goes back to that rote knowledge. It's okay to have them, but that cannot be the majority of your test. If it is, we got to work on that assessment. That's a red flag. Does the majority of the task require students to use reasoning to successfully complete the task? If the answer is no to that, if they're not having to use their reasoning skills, which I mean, that's what we're wanting in math and reading, social studies, science, we want that in all content areas. So if we answer no to that, that's something that's going to need to be tweaked. Does the task require students to use some understanding of disciplinary core ideas to successfully? Do they need to know the content somewhat? Yes, they're going to need it. But if you answer no to that, then that's something to work on. You can see the last ones are looking at the science engineering practices. If those are not there, that's a concern. Are the dimensions assessed separately in the majority? They should be combined together, and you'll see what we're talking about as we go on. Is the task coherent and comprehensible from the student perspective? Can they understand it? That's what we have to make sure is also available for our students. So thinking of this screener and what you dropped in the chat, because you all already nailed it, you already knew what it needs to be standards aligned, yes. But when we say standards aligned in science, that's 3-dimensional. And that's where I think a lot of us have had a hard time, because there's not a lot of great examples out there. And they're getting better, we're getting more, but that's been the hard thing for us. So hopefully today you're just going to say, oh, I'm just going to be one of your favorite people for today, hopefully, because I'm going to give you some information that you hopefully will find very, very useful. So in the chat, I'm getting ready to drop this document. And when you click on this link, I'm going to click on it with you and we're going to look at it together. But then we're going to take some time to look at the different sources, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. So I'm going to drop this in the chat, and if you are going to have access to it. So this is our inventory. There are over 600 items that you're going to have access to now, K through 12. And yeah, sometimes we're going to have to go back and get a lower grade level. We all know that, right? So when you open it, you're going to get this page that has the breakdown that just gives you the overall total. So if you can look and see that in elementary, which is 5th grade, is considered elementary for the standards, life science, you're going to have 62 items to pull from. K through 5. Now, remember that's K through 5. Earth and space science, 57 items. Physical science, 61 items, for a total of 180 items for your domains in a total. So kind of notice that you're going to get a lot of good resources in this. Now, some of them are very specific to fifth grade because within GSS, we have our particular standards, which thankfully Kentucky pretty much adopted. I do definitely want to click on the acknowledgments. These 4 individuals, I so appreciate these people. Just love them. Don't even know them. But they took the time to look. They're from Kansas, I believe is the state that they were from. But they took the time to go out and look at all these different resources. So these have been vetted. So that means they had to pass certain criteria to even get on this inventory. And then just to get taking the time to go through and do that. Oh my goodness, I just am so appreciative of these people. So let me pull this up because of things. So when you go to the task inventory tab, K through 12, there you go. 600 some items. Merry Christmas. Happy Valentine's Day. I guess that's the better one. It's closer, right? You can filter it, you can search it by grade level, by topic, so that's all great. So you have multiple ways that you can go through and do this. But I did make you a tab that was fifth grade specific. I just pulled, so everything in fifth grade is in this master list. I did not make anything new. I just pulled it and made you your own little tab. So this is all the fifth grade items. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some time as you as fifth grade teachers. I'm going to have a list of some of these tasks, and I've picked different sources. So notice here the sources here that we are looking at. This is Massachusetts, Delaware, Hawaii. Yes, Kentucky made the list, you all. Our TCTs are actually pretty good. A lot of people that have a little few years behind us and remember when those things came out, kind of scared the living daylights out of us, but they are good items. I'm not saying they're perfect, and I'm not saying anything on this list is perfect, but it gives you something to start from. So you've got all of these items. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some time to let you be able to look at the different sources today. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to yourself, and I'm going to give you a list to pick from. And part of the reason I'm wanting you to do this list is so that way you can talk with somebody else in your grade level that's teaching the same grade level you are and can kind of talk around these tasks. And you're going to get to choose which task you want. I've only got 5 for you to pick from. And you're going to take 5 minutes just to look at the task. And I want you to think about the pros. Now remember our checklist. You know, is it meeting that checklist? Is it a good science assessment task? What's the pros? What's the cons? How could you use this in your classroom? And we're going to let you share in a little group, and then we're going to talk out in our group ourselves. And we're going to make sure we get to look at each source that's on this list. So I want you to take a look. We have AMSTI, which is the Massachusetts site. It's called Bubbles and Fizz. So if that one kind of is your interest, I'm going to drop this in the chat for you to be able to click on your choice of the 5. Yes, this is just like what we try to do with our students, giving them choice in the classroom. The second one is from Los Angeles, and it is interactions of Earth systems. So you're looking at a little bit more of Earth space. New Hampshire, PACE, Good Samaritan, a Shadow Patterns Mystery. Is again, that's your Earth and space. SNAP is Stanford, if you're familiar with their work. It's movement of matter. Now, if you choose this one, you're going to need to scroll down the page to find that item. Okay, it's not like when you first click on it, it's a whole page of a lot of things mentioned. So movement of matter, that's a good one to look at. And then that one is actually, might fool you a little bit, but that's actually life science. And then Utah, formative task, popsicles. And so pick the one that you like and I just dropped them in the chat. And so of the 5, you click on the link to the one you look at. I didn't pick Kentucky because I was thinking some of you probably already looked at those. If you've been in trainings with me, you've probably looked at SNAP. So you might not want to look at that one, but we will look at it as a group. But pick one, and I'm going to set my alarm for 5 minutes and let you just have time to look at that. Now, I'll just say, I like to look and find what's going to go in my students' hands. That's the first thing I look for. I don't know if that's what you look for, but I want to see what the kids are going to get. And each one of you, depending on which one you pick, it's going to have a different way that you're going to need to go through and navigate. And we're going to take a look at that as a group too. So 5 minutes to look at your item, kind of look and see what it says for teachers and those types of things. So take 5 minutes to look at your item, please. Welcome, Gail. I'm going to drop in the chat for you. Pick, I don't know if she can hear me or not. Let's wait just a second. Welcome, Gail. Not sure if you can hear me or not, but I'm going to drop in the chat 5 items and you're going to pick one to look at. It's an assessment or task for you to look at. So you just look at the titles and take just a few more minutes to take a look at that and see what you think of it. So just pick one to look at. Great. So can you see the links in the chat, Gail? Yes. Okay, so you just pick one of those and take a look and think about the pros, the cons, and how you might use this task in your classroom. All righty. I hope that gave you enough time to be able to take a look and get an idea. Understand that it's kind of it is hard to get in and out of on a phone. I really struggle in Zoom on my phone. I am not very proficient, I guess you would say, with my phone when it comes to the Zoom features. But what we're going to do now is, now that you've taken a time to look at this and kind of got in your mind a little bit about the task, pros, cons, pleasure, understand pleasure. I forgot you drive the bus. Oh my goodness. Such busy people, I tell you. You all are awesome. But what we're going to do is I'm going to let you all, now this is a little tricky, but I have a feeling I'm working with some all-stars here, so I'm not going to worry at all about this. But what we are going to do is I'm going to let you pick your breakout room, because the breakout room is going to have the name of the task that you chose. So we'll see how this works out. Hopefully, if you're in a room by yourself, just come back out and talk to me and we'll talk about your task. But I'm hoping several of you picked the same one. But if not, we'll see how this works. Because the last time I did it, there were some items I picked that nobody chose. So you're going to take 5 minutes to go into your room. So now you've had time to explore. Now you're going to have time to discuss. You're going to have 5 minutes to talk to the people who've also looked at the same task you have in a breakout room. And you're going to talk about the pros, the cons, and how you would use this. Or you might already use something kind of similar to it. But I want you to begin with the person whose first name comes first alphabetically. And you're just going to pick the breakout number that will match your task. I even have the name of the task and the source on it for you. And when you come back out where we're a smaller group, everybody, you can either type in the chat or feel free to unmute to talk about it, because I know sometimes it's kind of hard to navigate on your phone or on your computers to switch between the different things. But if you ever lose Zoom, just go to the bottom of the icons and click on Zoom, and that usually will bring you back to where my to the Zoom room. So just kind of keep that in mind. Just find the icon, and that usually gets you back where you need to be. So we're going to open the breakout rooms. I'm going to let you have 5 minutes to kind of just talk about what you thought of the item, the pros, cons. Remember our checklist, what makes a good science item, and then how you would use this item if you would use this item. So I'm going to open the rooms. You try picking. It should just pop it up, and if it doesn't, find your controls for Zoom, and it should be on the bottom, or you can click those dots. So I've opened it, and you should see the 5 names of the task, and you just click on the one to join that matches the task you chose. So let me know if you need me to put you in a room. I can do that too. If you need me to put you. All right, looks like if you want to type in the chat which one you chose, you can tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, look at you all getting in those rooms. I am so impressed. Look at you. I'm so proud. And look at that. Most of you picked similar ones. Courtney, what'd you pick? 4. Okay, I'm going to move you to 4. Rebecca, nobody else picked your popsicle one, so it's you and me. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Rebecca. I'm so glad you're here today. How's everything going?
It's going crazy.
Oh my goodness, isn't that the truth? That is for sure.
Been going
What?
like a crazy woman trying to, they're getting ready, my 4th graders are getting ready to build hurricane-proof houses.
Oh, cool. That is
So
so
I
great.
have priced all the materials. So we went through criteria and the constraints today, and then I've
Oh,
tried to
great.
price everything, and it's crazy.
It's tough. Wow, that takes a lot of work, doesn't it?
It
Cody,
does.
do you need me to help get you back in your room? Are you okay, Cody? Oh, I better set my timer. I better put it on 4 minutes. I think they've already been in there at least a minute. What do you think of task 5? You went to the Utah. I actually like Utah as
Um,
format. What
I
did you think of them?
I really liked it, and I did something very, very similar not too long ago with it, so it was good to know I was on the right track. I
Awesome.
saw it
That is
because
great.
I bought some scales, and we, almost the same along the same lines, we were weighing, water and ice.
Okay. All right. Water and ice. Well, that's a really good. So, going along the same lines. So, how could you use this item in your classroom, you think? Can you?
Um, I was gonna pull it back up so I could see it, but I can't get to it now.
I will pull them up whenever we're going over these. So,
I would honestly, use this following up with what I did, where it was using, different things just to make sure, that they had a good understanding of what we did.
oh, that's awesome.
Just a follow-up assessment.
Okay. Well, I think that sounds like a great way to use it. I probably would have used similar in my classroom. I either may have used it as an introductory thing at times. It would just kind of depend on my class. But if I'd done something similar, I would definitely use it as maybe a study option, kind of like a study guide, or
Mhm.
actually the assessment itself.
Well, we're getting ready to do a, what we call a scrimmage. So
Hmm.
we make everything KSA like. We, like, do our test, we put them in their
Mm,
rooms, and
great.
this would be a really good one,
To
with some tweaking to use for that.
Right. And you would probably need to do some tweaking on some of them, wouldn't you? Now there's some in here though you won't have to tweak much on them as we go through and look at some of the options because some of them even have like the multi-select and the short answer and more the open extended
Mhm.
response items. So you've gotten a whole wealth, hopefully, of things you can pull from and help you to be able to keep you from having to work so hard as far as making your own items because
Oh
these
gosh, it's awful.
it's terrible. It's a
I
very hard thing.
um, Tanya Dillon from the board had came and observed me one day, and she looked at one of my tests that I had made up, and we use Canvas.
Hmm.
So I had made, gosh, I guess they had 6 tabs they had to go through.
Oh, awesome.
And
Look at
so
you.
I had put, charts and graphs, and
Uh-huh.
the tabs just said tab 1, tab 2. So even throughout the questions, I didn't guide them which tab to go to, they had to figure it out, which
Oh,
source that
that's
they needed
awesome.
to use.
See,
So, that's been, like, one of the things, like, I have found has been the greatest thing to help, you know, me and my class, so
yes, because that helps to train them because you're giving them something where they're having to reason through how to work through something that by the end of the day they may say the state assessment's easier than your assessment.
I hope so.
Before that's probably what's gonna go on with that would be my thought. But that is phenomenal. I love it. So you kind of like Utah's items all follow this same format.
Mhm.
So the way that document is and how it's broken down, they all kind of follow that same. So I kind of like Utah's. I think they've done a nice job with theirs. We will close the breakout rooms and let everybody else come back. And it's cute. You were the only one that did not have a partner. Everybody else went to 2 other places. It's so sweet. I love it. I love it. Love it. Awesome. Awesome. I hope you all were able to talk in your rooms. Oh, what we are going to do is now we're going to take a look at each one of these items and the different sources. Now, I didn't pick Kentucky, and there was a couple of other sources we're not going to get to look at today because I knew our numbers were a little lower today, which I'm kind of happy about. I'll just be honest with you. It's, smaller numbers makes it easier to work with. So what we're going to do is we're first going to look at this first item. And the reason we're going to pull this up so that you can see kind of the layout of the source. So this is the AMSTI. So when you pull up that master inventory document, that's the first ones on the list. And they all kind of follow this similar format. So it's got this little performance task. Notice the language. It even has phenomenon based problem. That would be a positive on our little checklist. We can see it gives us a nice little summary, talks about the disciplinary core idea, talks about SCPs. This one's using mathematics and computational thinking. Now, this is the bubbles in the fizz one, which really works well with your reading and math standards too. If you incorporate these planning, carrying out investigations, and you can see the cross-cutting concepts. So this has a really nice format to it. Now, what I always like to look at is the student worksheet. So this you can look and see, okay, it's kind of giving them a situation and they're going to do a model volcano, which is a very common thing we see, right? With the baking soda and the vinegar, and talks about he pours it in the glass, he lights a candle, and we see what's going on. And then they notice that the candle goes out. And so then it goes through and it has these little questions that it's asking. So, is this something your kids could do? Is this something? What I love about these is they're already made out. I can go, I can pull I can change it. This is actually a document I can download and I can go in and make changes to it. And a lot of work's already done for me. Your all's jobs are way too hard. We need to try to help you as much as we can. And these items are pretty nice for the most part. And you see that, you have a lot of um, graphics. You have even some graphing that you're going to have to do, a graph, chart, pictogram, or table that supports the answer. So that's pulling in your math skills that your kids should be knowing, and your math teacher is going to love you. This will be a great thing. And actually talk to them and talk to your math teacher how they would want you to encourage them to answer, to kind of support. Because in doing this kind of item, you're also prepping them for the math assessment as well. The more we can help each other, the better. Then it has your teacher's instructions on down through here to be able to go through. So personally, I kind of like the Massachusetts items. Always did. I always went to their website when I taught seventh grade. They were really more of the quick recall knowledge, but they're getting better, especially on this one. Los Angeles County. All right, interactions of Earth systems. Can one of you all unmute and share with us what you all thought of this one? I'm gonna pull it up. Doesn't look too flashy right now, I'm gonna tell you. Sometimes you gotta look. What did you all think about this one? Can you unmute or type in the chat?
Okay, in the time that I had to look over it, I went down the checklist on that we had looked at though, and I felt like that it was phenomenon based, and the kids did have to use the task scenario information. They could not just use knowledge that they had recall, so that was good. I didn't get a whole lot of time to
Sorry.
get through, like go through
Sorry.
the fine tooth comb, so to speak. So,
Yeah,
but those were the big things that did stick out to me.
great. So could you use this, or would you use this in your class?
Yes, I would.
Would you? Great, great. Might need a little tweaking, and that's the thing I always say is these items are not going to be perfect by no means, but it gives you some place to start. Does anybody else in that group want to talk about the interactions of Earth systems? So here we have a nice little Earth space one.
I thought it was really something I would use. I think I would probably kind of make it a two-part, in that for me, like my kids really struggle with content that is specific to them. And this one I think was set in Alaska somewhere. So I think that would be a struggle for my students. But I also think I live really close to the Ohio River. And it deals with flooding. It deals with the hydrosphere. So I think I could do kind of a compare and a contrast with it. And I think that would be a really good use of that.
Oh yeah, we could, definitely our kids can relate to flooding, right, with this one. Maybe not from ice melting and glaciers, but most of our students are all too well aware of the flooding piece of it and that comparison with it. I love that. That's awesome, Gail. Thank you for sharing. So that was the second one. Now, New Hampshire, nobody picked the Good Samaritan. And what was kind of neat about a shadow patterns mystery, let me go. I need to put these in that. Let's see again. But this one, when you look at it, not looking too interesting, but as you scroll down, you see your teacher instructions. Sorry. Gives my disciplinary core idea or place in the universe and talks about the standards. Gives me my SCPs, cross-cutting concepts. And kind of taking a look. So it is going around one. It even gives me accommodations. That's nice. Constructing explanation, communicating findings. So it's got the claim, evidence, reasoning that we all are trying to make sure our kids are being able to do, and that's going to help in other areas too. And so here, ooh, looky here, got a little scoring guide. Like it when they include that. So a shadow patterns mystery. So we have a mystery we're trying to solve. So it is around a phenomenon. Gives us nice data that we're not having to go out and find ourselves. Love that. And gives us individual questions. And so gives us some examples of how things will look, misconceptions that might come out. So other possible answers that we would be seeing with that one. So I kind of like it. When I think of how some of my students would be, even in 7th grade, I would probably have to modify this one a little bit to help them at times. But my goal would be to get them and bring them up to level on these. So maybe like what was mentioned earlier about breaking it into parts and pieces and doing pieces at a time. But would be a really good thing to maybe use as we're looking at the shadows and talking about the positioning of the sun in the sky and doing some experiments with that. So I would definitely use this one. The next one on our list is SNAP. So some of you went with the movement of material, the life science one. So I'm going to pull it up. And this is the one I warned you about that you needed to scroll down because this has got the short performance assessments, and these are meant to be 20 to 40 minutes long. And you can see we have 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and then there we are, movement of matter. What did you all think about this that got to go in this group? And hopefully you had a little bit of time. I know you didn't get enough the time you really probably would want, but this is the one right here. Any thoughts on it?
I thought it was really good, and it had them analyzing.
It is good. I thought it was too. I like that it had this read this first. And so you click on that, and that's kind of all my notes. That lets me see that what the standard is and gives me just some little things to help me to know what to do with it. But let's take a look at the assessment item. And they have a rubric. Always kind of like a rubric, don't we? So you can see it's a story about Australia. And sometimes it is, we do want to make sure our kids are exposed to other areas, but we might could utilize this one and then make our own for one in our own area. Find one that would fit for animals in our area, but very much has the language is getting to. I like what you said, Ms. West, about it's analyzing. You're really having to look and analyze what you're looking at. So a good task.
And honestly, I think too with this one,
Mm-hmm.
where it isn't here, they can't go on prior knowledge. They have to.
Ooh, I love that. That is a good point because it's not just something that they've already had in class. Like, yeah, we've not had kangaroos most likely, right? In any examples we would have used here in Kentucky, but that's a good point. I like that. Kind of forces them outside of their area of what they are familiar with. Awesome. The next item, the final item, it was just me and Rebecca talking about popsicles. Rebecca, do you feel comfortable unmuting and talking about this one?
I'm sure. I had done one very similar to this one in my classroom not too long ago. I used water and ice where the kids were weighing prior to the ice melting, weighing the water, taking in consideration the cup, and they had to graph their data, and just very similar to this one. And if I were to use this one right now in my classroom, I would probably use it as a follow-up assessment to what I've already done because I've already taught it. But
Awesome.
This was a really good piece right here.
I'm like you. I like Utah's. I'll just have to tell you all. It's in my top 3 of the ones of the different sources, and so definitely make sure that you're looking at the Utah formative tasks that are on the inventory. They are very helpful. Oh, Alicia, thank you for dropping. She also liked on the snap, she liked how it had the rubric and sample student responses. I love it when they include student responses too, because that way I can just pull those and let the kids be wondering whose it is in the classroom, and it's nobody's, and they're all sitting there wondering, trying to figure out who's what kids sample writing is that, because some of them have those too. I love that.
Miss Belcher, it's
Yes.
Natasha Baird. It's nice to see you.
Hey, how are you? I was wondering where you were.
Well, I actually was about a few minutes late, but
That's okay.
West and I had trouble finding the student responses.
Okay, on which one? Let's see, that would be on this one, the snap one. Let's look and see.
It said it had them, but then I couldn't get to it for some reason.
Let's see, get the score. Let's see. Did it download it? Okay, so there's that. I'm looking. Sample student responses right here. They're not handwritten, they're actually typed.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. Now, some of them actually do have them where it's the student's handwriting, and those are probably my favorite because, your kids all think it's, thank you, Alicia, appreciate you typing that in there. But that gives us examples of what kids would write. So you could, pull your worst penmanship out and write the responses yourself. You all think I'm awful. I would use my worst penmanship on the best answer, just to see if that would mess with what the kids would think about them, because sometimes they'll automatically think it's not good and then make the one that's the lowest score have the prettiest handwriting, and seeing if they're letting just the look of the answer skew, and are they having a little bit of a halo effect there, just because it looks good. And so I would probably just go and rewrite some of these, and not that I'm sneaky or anything, but I think that that's a good thing to do sometimes with the kids. But there they are. I'd have had trouble finding those too. But I do like some of the sample responses that they have. So that's some of our major tasks that we have from the different sources. So these are all different sources. And the nice thing about what you just looked at is they all kind of follow that same format. So if I go to Massachusetts, all of those are going to follow that similar format. Same thing with the Los Angeles County, the New Hampshire. Now, we didn't look at Kentucky because we're from Kentucky. Hopefully we've seen our TCTs. If not, they're on that list. You need to go take a look at them because they do have some good ones on there. It did make the list. These have been vetted. So we've looked at this awesome resource. You've now, happy birthday, 600 items. You're in good shape now. But I like how some of you are thinking about, okay, my colleagues, they're having to do assessments in reading, they're having to do assessments in math. We're 5th grade, so we're going to be seeing social studies and writing assessments. So making sure that, are we utilizing some of these released items? So what I'm going to drop in the chat for you now is making sure, and I know most of you have seen these, that the released items, making sure you have that website and you do get a copy of the PowerPoint. And we're also going to look at the practice test, the Kentucky practice test, just so that making sure that the kids know what they're going to look like when they get on the computer, because we all know that's a different variable. We're looking that's throwing something in, and the kids need to be familiar with how that's going to look. And so if you're giving them items in science, kind of practicing that look, that's going to help your social studies, it's going to help your math and your reading and your writing. So let's take a look at this released item, the first one. Whoops, should pull over here. And so you'll see the 2023 released items. Now here's the interesting thing for science. Now I know some of you might be clicking on some of those, and that's okay. But we're going to look at science, and you're 5th grade. So we really need to go to the 7th grade items. And what's interesting, all the released items for 7th grade are 6th grade. So a lot of times the questions on the 7th grade assessment go back to 6th grade content, 5th grade content, and 7th grade content. It's all fair game. So making sure that you're taking a look at these and utilizing parts of them. Yes, look at the 4th, look at the 11th. But when you take a look at these, what I really like with how they released them this year is they do have it on paper. Just be honest, I would go pull one of these. Something I always had on hand was an emergency sub plan, because with kids, we're gonna wake up one morning and we're gonna have a sick kid, and I would utilize like the Explore. I even sometimes leave ACT. I know some of you might think that's awful, but it's good practice. And it's time. They would have to do it. But what was nice about Explore is it was more close to their grade level. But I would also use like a sample state assessment, like my released items. I would have a set of those, and I'd say they have to get done within the class period. That would be in a stack off to the side that would have emergency lesson plan off to the side, so that if I had to have that day, whether it was my daughter or my parents that I was needing to miss school for that I was not expecting, I could just easily call the sub and say, hey, grab my emergency lesson plans, use that for today. And so that way the kids still had something that was going to be pretty productive for them. So yeah, I would probably make a copy of some of these, make a paper copy. But what I do like about what they've done is each page after the question has, okay, here's the percent correct in Kentucky that got it. Here's my correct answer. You can see is B. We can see that 56%. I loved using things like this with my students, because like when, like 90% of them would get it right, I could talk to them and say, I want you to look at this. 90% of y'all got this right and only 57% in the state got this right. Is that not pitiful? Y'all are, and brag on your kids. Tell them how smart they are. Because that's one of the biggest battles we have with our students, is they always kind of sell themselves short. And so kind of building up their confidence and making them feel they can is a huge thing. But as you go through, that is one thing that I like about a lot of these questions, is right after it, you're going to get the data. Now notice on this one, only 38% got this one right. You could use this as just a practice, as kids bell work coming in the room, or do, like I said, use it as a practice item, for a day for an emergency plan. But that also gives you the anchor sets for you to be able to use student responses. Once again, these are typed. I do like them when it's in the student's handwriting, but we can write them ourselves and that can be utilized. So that is handy to make sure that you're using. But now also, are you utilizing the previous years? Because it's not just 2023, there's 2022 and 2020 released items as well. Now, this is the actual practice test site. If you've not been here, you need to go. It's the second link I just dropped that says KAS practice test, where you can go in and it actually goes, I practiced this with my group of students so that they could go through and see what it looked like. So we could have that conversation of, okay, this is it. You see the tabs, you see, and go through like what the different navigation buttons mean, the review button, and teaching them how to utilize this. And some of them probably will figure out quicker than definitely me. But what I like about a lot of these is they have examples of those 2 best answers. Same thing with that big nice inventory I just gave you. We're going to go over just a couple minutes, and I apologize, but I'm going just as fast as I can. So sorry. But that is nice to have. Now, here's some other things I'm going to give you. Now, I'm not saying these are perfect, but they are states that use test nav. And what you're going to find interesting is, like when it comes to Iowa, they test in 5th grade. So you're going to see some of their questions. I kind of like Iowa is probably my pick of these as examples. So you can click on the Iowa example. But you're going to notice, you can see 5th grade, we are on the science practice test. I can go in here and you're going to see that it's pretty much, notice we're still in test nav. We're just going to be looking at 9 questions. I went through these. These are kind of pretty nice to where you could just talk with your students, and it's an experiment. And most of your students would probably be able to work through this as a group, as a topic of conversation. Now, this one won't let me advance without answering a question. So to be able to see the next question, they have to be able to look at this, know what the amount was, and be able to do some reasoning. And it is, you'll notice around a phenomenon that this is grouped. Gotta do my leaving. So that's Iowa. Where's Kentucky? And then New Jersey, once again, doing a similar thing. Again, science being given at the 5th grade level. You can see here there's computer-based, there's paper-based. You would even want to print some of these off and leave those as a emergency plan. Because when you look at some of these, you're gonna be like, yeah, your students could do some of these on their own, and it would be nice to have them in that timed interval of time. So just so that you're aware of those. Massachusetts was a big one I used back years ago. The one on the inventory is the one I would recommend utilizing the most. Their items on their test nav are, not many of them are grouped around a phenomenon. The only use of it would be seeing the test nav. But I did put it there in case you wanted to look at it and look at the different content areas, because they do have some nice reading and math items too in there. But definitely Iowa and New Jersey would be the ones for science that are really stronger examples. Do want to make sure you are aware of that KDE is having a webinar, starting a webinar series that if you have not signed up for, it would be great for you to do. It is, I think, 3 or 4 sessions. And so what you're clicking on in the chat is the email that was sent. Sent it to PD coordinators in our districts. And hopefully you've seen this, but the deadline to apply for this is February 7th. Driving question boards are a big thing with Open SciEd that they are encouraging, and is just a good way to get our kids thinking and trying to figure things out in the science classroom. So just want to make sure you are aware of that. I always highly recommend, if KDE is offering something, get involved, be a part of it, apply. This is one you can just sign up and do. So be a part of it, sign up. The next thing, some of you have seen this one. This is the revised vertical alignment for science. And so I'm going to drop this in the chat, and I will be putting that in. That is in your participant folder, which I'll be dropping in the chat here too. What's nice about this document, it was actually created by a colleague of mine at Pikeville Chemfields, and I asked for her permission to be able to modify it, and she said go for it, and to go ahead and to utilize it. And what I did is I updated it with the release of the standards for 2023. Green means nothing changed. And if you look at you in 5th grade, you're basically, not a lot of things have changed for you. Now, if you've been in many meetings with me, I've always said I love teaching earth and space science. Loved rocks and minerals is my favorite thing to teach, weathering, erosion, all that stuff. I know I'm a nerd, but look at earth and space. What did they do with these new standards? They took everything I loved away from me. I did not get to teach it, and administration did not appreciate when I asked if I could go to 6th grade to teach, because that's where all my stuff went that I like to teach, and that didn't happen. But just so that you can see, what's nice about this is if I'm teaching 5th grade and I'm doing the universe and the stars, where else would I look? What grade levels? Well, that's going to be first. And this also shows how important every grade level is. 4th grade is where assessment occurs. And notice the universe and the stars, Earth and the solar system is 1st grade content. They're not even supposed to be teaching that. The history of the planet Earth is 4th grade. So this helps you to see just how important each grade level is, and why we're doing sessions for each grade level to kind of help them see the importance of what they're doing. So hopefully you like that document. It is updated. It's got the revised standards, and I'm done. I've talked long and hard here, haven't I? So sorry, you guys. But hopefully you can say that you now have increased access to science assessments and tasks. You can evaluate. No, I'm not doing it for social studies too. I'm sorry, Ms. West. But I have not found a document quite like this one that I have found that was given to me. This inventory, when I saw it, I was like, okay, we've got to get this out there and we got to make sure people realize what a great resource it is.
I bet Miss West could make you a document.
I bet she could too. I bet she could get me one together on that one and pull it from all the different, because you know that it just takes the time to get it there. Cody Mitchell said, if she does, could she send it? If she does, she could send it to me. If you get that together, share. But hopefully you can evaluate your science, which I know a lot of you already knew, but really getting in our mind that our assessments have to be three-dimensional. They cannot just be DCI, disciplinary core ideas. They need to be three-dimensional. So keeping that in mind. So now you have this boatload of items that you can hopefully pull and use. You can make adjustments because they are going to need tweaking. They're not perfect, but they're not bad. They're going to be something you can use, hopefully. I just want to thank you for attending today. If you will take just a second to fill out this feedback survey for me that I'm going to drop in the chat. Give me suggestions on how to get better, how to make this a more beneficial hour for people. Like Wednesday, I'm doing a repeat for 4th grade because I had a lot of people request it, but Monday is for 6th grade teachers. So I'm kind of doing it every Monday for so many weeks, and I'm really trying to focus on just one grade level at a time, because as we saw from that vertical alignment, everybody's really different of what that they're having to teach. So that's why we're being very strategic in doing each grade level. Yes, I'm doing kindergarten in 1st and 2nd too. So if you have some teachers in your building, you can say, hey, this might be something you want to listen to, and get some ideas. You have not gotten a link for the 4th grade. Okay, did you sign up, Rebecca, for Wednesday? I will look and see on that. If you hang on,
Check and make. Okay.
I will check. Let me, while you're still on here, let me check that and see if you're on that list. But thank you all for being here today. I hope you found this beneficial. I hope you are going to be able to use some of these items. I'm all about, working that core instruction is the most important of what you do day in and day out with your students, and getting to the rigor of the standards. That's what's going to make the biggest difference. It doesn't matter what assessment anybody throws in your direction to your kids, they will be fine. So just kind of keep that in mind. Will do, Miss West. I'll do that. As long as she does, make sure she does the feedback for me on that too. And I will do that right now too. But thank you all for being here. Appreciate everybody.